When the first rays of morning light slipped through the dusty windows of music room, the city of Lakeside was just waking to a cold Monday in April. Riverside Middle School, perched beside the river from which it took its name, was reflected in the water so perfectly that it sometimes looked like a giant mirror. As school buses rumbled up in single file, spewing diesel fumes and noisy chatter, students poured in through the main gate. Amid the clamor, a slender, quiet African-American girl stepped off bus number 12. She was Avery Johnson, 13 years old. Avery appeared uneasy, clutching an old violin case close to her chest, her head slightly bowed, her oversized navy coat seeming almost to hide her. She barely spoke a word, nodding politely to the driver before hastening inside, as if afraid someone would spot her. The moment she crossed the main foyer, the bell rang for first period. Hallways buzzed with students jockeying for lockers and their next classes. Bright, colorful posters announcing the upcoming talent showcase, set for that Friday, were plastered all over the walls. Avery paused, eyes flickering at the posters, but then quietly wove her way through the crowd, heading straight for her math classroom. Almost nobody noticed her. This was nothing new. At Riverside Middle, people routinely saw Avery walking alone, sitting alone, rarely showing any emotion. It was a persistent silence that made her practically invisible, though a few did notice her. Unfortunately, not in the kindest way. Math class 3.2 with Ms. Caldwell started at 8 a.m. Ms. Caldwell, a stern, middle-aged woman with a beige cardigan and a costume pearl necklace, prided herself on running a tight ship. Some claimed she acted as if she ran the entire school building. The room was spacious, with 6 rows of desks, 4 desks in each row. In the last row by the window sat Avery, alone. Her violin case stood upright between her knees, as though she feared that even a slight shift would shatter it. Practically no one wanted to share that seat with Avery. People said she was strange, withdrawn, unapproachable. She rarely lifted her eyes from her notepad and would sometimes rest her fingers on the violin case as though making sure it was still there. That morning, Ms. Caldwell wrapped up her lecture on fractions and ratios, then reminded the class of the upcoming talent showcase. Her tone made it seem more like an obligatory announcement than genuine encouragement. You should all consider participating. Sing, dance, whatever you can do. Mr. Fletcher, our PE teacher, will be running the show. At the mention of Mr. Fletcher, a few students chuckled. He was known for making silly jokes and occasionally lacking tact. Ms. Caldwell's gaze suddenly shifted to Avery. And our quiet Ms. Johnson here has been carrying that violin around all year. Perhaps you'd like to show us what you can do with it. Instantly, a murmur spread around the room. Students exchanged glances, some covering smirks. Nobody actually believed Avery had anything worthwhile to offer on stage. Ms. Caldwell raised an eyebrow, half expectant, half derisive. Surely you don't just lug that thing around for show, right? She added, lightly tapping her fingernails on the desk. Her words hung in the silent air, triggering scattered titters. A few students turned in their seats, curiosity and a desire for entertainment lighting their eyes. They wanted to see if Avery would freeze up. But Avery kept her gaze lowered, both hands gripping the violin case. Hey, Avery, play us a cat screech. Yeah, let's hear some squeaky strings. A brief wave of mocking laughter rippled through the class. Ms. Caldwell let out a small, self-satisfied smirk as though she had just done something charitable. Just kidding, dear. Don't take it personally. At that moment, Avery slowly raised her head and stared straight ahead, her expression calm and determined. I'll do it, she said, her voice composed, as if she were casually ordering at a drive-thru. That single statement subdued the entire class. Ms. Caldwell blinked. Are you serious? Avery didn't bother repeating herself. She simply picked up a pen and wrote her name on the sign-up sheet circulating through the class. Avery Johnson, the letters neat and deliberate. Then the bell rang, signaling the end of the period. Amid the commotion of students packing their materials, Avery quietly left the room, leaving behind a mix of puzzlement and awe. Lakeside wasn't a huge city, but large enough that affluent neighborhoods stood in stark contrast to rundown areas. Avery lived in an aging apartment block on the river's east side, with rusty iron stairwells and hallways tarnished by mold and water stains. Her place, B, was up on the third floor, where a draft swept through the door's cracks on cold nights. Her mother, Monica Johnson, worked the graveyard shift cleaning a mall downtown, only 3 blocks from home. She typically left around dusk and returned before dawn. Avery's younger brother, Miles, was 7, attending the elementary school next door. That afternoon, Avery arrived home a little after 4 o'clock. Unlocking the door, she slipped into the dim apartment, which smelled faintly of leftover food and cleaning fluids. A sink stacked with unwashed dishes sat in the tiny kitchen, but Avery gave them no notice. "You're back?" asked Miles, peeking from the shared bedroom, holding a cheap comic book. Avery just nodded and headed inside. It was a cramped space with 2 single beds separated by a faded curtain, paint peeling across the walls. She gently set the violin case down, unlatched it like she was unveiling a priceless treasure. Her violin had scuffs along the body, a worn bow, and signs of age, but she cradled it as if it were newly polished. She tuned the strings by ear, listening carefully for each ping until the pitch was right. In the kitchen, her mother called out, "Hun, there's some pasta left over. Are you hungry?" "Not really," Avery answered. Monica didn't push. She knew Avery's ways. Once she delved into her violin, everything else faded, dinner included. "Just keep the volume down," her mother advised gently, "so the neighbors don't bang on the walls." Avery stepped to the lone window, catching the last rays of the fading daylight. She inhaled deeply, positioned the violin on her shoulder, and shut her eyes. The first notes sounded timid, floating delicately through the thin curtain and into the hallway. Perhaps the grumpy neighbor next door might soon pound the wall again. But Avery didn't care. She played a piece she'd composed herself, a fusion of classical and blues, layered with raw longing, sadness, and hope. The talent showcase was 4 days away, stirring a mix of excitement and nervousness throughout Riverside Middle. Posters covered every bulletin board, listing performances, singing, dancing, magic tricks, comedy routines. Avery Johnson's name was tucked discreetly at number 14 on the lineup. Some students skimming the list were puzzled. Who's Avery Johnson? Others snickered. Probably that violin girl who hardly talks. Maybe she'll scrape a few basic notes and then run off crying. Mr. Fletcher, orchestrating the event, stood in the gym. "All right, folks, lock in your entries. Don't back out last minute." He gazed across the bleachers and spotted Avery, who was adjusting her violin strings. He offered a half smile. "So, violin girl, you ready for your big show?" Avery glanced up for a split second, then returned to adjusting the pegs. She gave no reply, causing Mr. Fletcher's grin to fade awkwardly. Standing nearby was Jake, a quiet 7th grader of Latin heritage who sometimes accompanied the school choir on piano. He overheard the exchange and approached Avery when Mr. Fletcher moved on. "You're really going to play, huh? Your own piece?" She nodded. He smiled. "That's awesome. Don't listen to the jokes. Some folks want you to fail, but others hope you blow everyone away." Avery didn't smile back. but she dipped her head slightly, gratitude flickering in her eyes. At home, Avery practiced each night until her hands went numb. Monica, from the adjacent room, listened to each run. When Avery missed a note or botched the tempo, her mother knocked 3 times on the wall, a silent code for try again. Miles sometimes hovered in the doorway, watching curiously. "Are you going to win?" She lowered the bow, massaging her temples. I don't know, Miles." He cocked his head. "So why do you keep at it?" Locking eyes with him, she answered softly, "Because I want them to hear me. It's the only way I know how to speak." Miles didn't fully understand, but he nodded and wandered away. Avery went back to the melody, repeating the transition measure, the part where the song burst into a powerful, almost anguished cry. In the quiet of the night, the plaintive strains of her violin resonated against the peeling wallpaper. It was the wordless story of a 13-year-old girl who felt alone in a world full of clashing voices. Thursday arrived, just one day before the talent showcase. The atmosphere at Riverside was a hectic blend of excitement and jitters. Everywhere, students rehearsed their routines: street dancers, solo singers, mini-plays. At noon, Avery passed the staff lounge and heard a conversation through the slightly ajar door. Inside, Miss Caldwell was talking to some colleagues. Avery caught snatches of their words. "Frankly, that Johnson girl, I'm worried she'll just waste our time. I suggested it to her the other day, but who'd have thought she'd actually sign up? I doubt she's got the nerve to perform on stage." Another teacher, Ms. Delgado, art department, replied, "Well, Ms. Caldwell, we should give students a chance. You never know." "Oh, sure, a chance, but that girl hardly talks at all. I don't see any great talent there. More like someone lugging a violin around for show." Standing in the hallway, Avery felt as if she'd been stabbed. She knew people doubted her, but hearing it firsthand stung intensely. She backed away, heart pounding, then hurried off with heavy steps. She had never been so afraid. Afraid of being ridiculed, of messing up, of having her fragile dreams crushed by people who barely looked at her. That night, she practiced for over 3 hours. Her fingers were sore, nearly raw from pressing the strings. Near midnight, Monica peeked in, concern shadowing her tired eyes. "You'll wear yourself out, honey. You have school and the big day tomorrow." Avery carefully set her violin aside, eyes rimmed red. Yet there was a faint but resolute smile on her lips, as if she were preparing for something monumental. "I know, Mom," she murmured. Monica moved closer and gently pulled Avery into a hug. "No matter what happens tomorrow, I'm proud of you." Friday dawned with a light drizzle and a biting chill. The school courtyard was slick with rain, pushing the entire student body into the gymnasium, where a modest stage was set up with rows of folding chairs. Avery arrived early, hiding behind a heavy backstage curtain. She could hear the static of the microphone and Mr. Fletcher's cheerful chatter with the audience, the squeaking of metal chairs, and the low buzz of excitement. Occasionally, she heard snatches of Avery Johnson spoken in perplexed tones. 15 acts were slated. Avery was 14th. One by one, the performers went on. Dancers, singers, a magician, comedic sketches. Teachers filled the front row, Ms. Caldwell among them, arms folded, scanning performances critically. Mr. Fletcher, though initially upbeat, seemed anxious when a few acts didn't go as planned. Toward the middle, Jake performed a well-received piano solo. From the stage, he glanced at the seats, seeming to look for Avery. He flashed a quiet smile, as though silently rooting for her. After the 13th performance, Mr. Schont, Fletcher took the mic again, flipping through the pages. "Next up, number 14, A violin solo by Avery Johnson. A hush. No immediate applause. Just a few murmurs. Avery Johnson? Who's that? Behind the curtain, Avery's heart pounded as though it might burst. She inhaled, grasped the violin, and stepped out. As she emerged, the restless gym seemed to pause. Students began lifting phones to record, expecting a humiliating flop. Ms. Caldwell leaned forward, apparently awaiting a crash and burn moment. Avery offered no greeting or introduction. She simply raised the violin to her shoulder. The stage light illuminated her face, revealing the calm determination in her eyes. The first note was so soft, it nearly dissolved into the rustle of the crowd. But after a few seconds, it grew in warmth and resonance, so even the students at the farthest bleachers held their breath. She was playing her own composition, half classical, half blues, full of sorrow and yearning. It began like a gentle whisper, then swelled into a raw, keening cry, as if releasing hidden anguish. Each vibrato, each shift of her left hand, she poured out her entire spirit, her pain, her dreams, her plea to be heard. And then something extraordinary happened. A complete hush fell over the gym. No more snickers, no more muttering, only Avery's music, echoing and pulsing with life. When the piece reached its climax, she held one piercing note for what felt like forever, letting it soar. Then she guided it back to the main key, ending in a soft, poignant resolution. She could hear her heart hammering in her ears, merging with the final echo of the violin. A tense pause, silence heavy in the air. Avery lowered her bow, breath quivering. Suddenly, someone in the back row started clapping. Then another. Within seconds, the entire gym erupted in applause and shouts of approval. Students who had their phones out expecting a comedic blunder found themselves filming a truly mesmerizing performance. Ms. Caldwell, arms still folded, blinked in disbelief. Mr. Fletcher stood speechless at the side of the stage. Jake, in the middle row, stood up first, cheering enthusiastically. The ovation built, rising to a thunderous acclaim. Avery's hands trembled, not from fear, but from the tidal wave of emotion threatening to spill over. She bowed slightly, then stepped off stage with her face flushed pink. Behind the curtain, Mr. Fletcher caught her arm. That was extraordinary. I'm at a loss for words. Avery simply nodded, moving aside to catch her breath. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but relief radiated through her. Miss Caldwell, who had lingered near the front row, approached as Avery made her way into the hallway. The teacher's voice was husky, eyes uncertain. Avery, I owe you an apology. I underestimated you. You were incredible. Avery didn't look smug or angry. She just met Ms. Caldwell's gaze levelly and spoke softly. You should have seen me before today. Ms. Caldwell opened her mouth but couldn't find words. Avery gave a polite nod and walked on, leaving the teacher to wrestle with her embarrassment. While the audience buzzed with post-show excitement, Avery packed her violin backstage, intending to slip out through a sance door. Crowds weren't her thing, but at the parking lot, she was startled to find Monica and Miles waiting. "Mom?" she whispered, eyes widening. Her mother, still in her old coat, with weary shadows under her eyes, smiled at her. "I took the morning off to watch you play." Miles beamed, jumping around. "You were so good!" Avery's eyes glistened as the three of them hugged in a rare moment of pure warmth, oblivious to curious glances. "You did it," Monica murmured, "and I hope no one ever forgets your music." Tears rolled down Avery's cheeks, tears of relief and joy. Monday morning arrived under a bright sky. the watery sunlight drenching Riverside's campus. The flashy talent posters had been taken down, replaced by fresh announcements. But the atmosphere around Avery had undeniably shifted. Walking through the gate, she felt the curious stares, saw some classmates nod politely, others offering a shy smile. A few underclassmen whispered, "That's the violin girl." Mr. Fletcher, from across the corridor, gave a warm grin and a thumbs up. "Heard about your performance? Great job, kid." Avery merely returned a small nod, then Caldwell came around the corner. She hovered for a moment, as if summoning courage to speak. Finally, she moved closer. "Avery, may I speak with you?" Avery halted, eyes calm. Ms. Caldwell cleared her throat. "I owe you a genuine apology. What I said last week was wrong." A tense pause. Avery just looked at her. "I shouldn't have judged you so quickly," Ms. Caldwell went on. "I'm still learning." Avery considered responding with a barbed remark. She had many stored up, but instead, she held Ms. Caldwell's gaze and spoke quietly. "You should have seen me sooner." The teacher blinked. Those words cut deeper than a harsh retort ever could. Avery turned and left, not bitter, just unwilling to remain invisible. At lunchtime, Jake slid a chocolate milk across the table to her, flashing a mischievous grin. "We should do a duet sometime." She shrugged with mild amusement. "You're not quite up to my level yet." She let out a small laugh, short but warm. A few heads turned, surprised to hear her laugh for the first time. That night at home, Avery didn't rush for her violin. Instead, she sat on the couch next to Miles, watching a muted cartoon. Monica poked her head in from the kitchen. "Not practicing tonight?" "Not tonight," Avery replied. "You sure you're okay?" She paused, thinking. "Yeah, I'm okay." Not everyone who clapped necessarily cared, and not everyone who rose to their feet had a complete change of heart. But for some, it made a difference. Sometimes, a little shift is all it takes to start something bigger. In life, there will be people who overlook you until you force them to listen. So play your music, whatever form it takes. If you've ever been doubted, forgotten, or mocked, remember Avery. Remember that silence can be a form of strength. But your true voice, however you express it, can carry so much further. Tell your story. Let them hear it. A week later, a notice appeared on the principal's bulletin board, seeking members for the Riverside School Orchestra. The news spread quickly, exciting many students. Jake hurried to find Avery. "They're starting an orchestra. They need a skilled violinist. You in?" She hesitated. She recalled the nerves on stage, the wave of relief, the thunderous applause, and also the fear of facing an audience again. Just then, Ms. Delgado, the art teacher, passed by with a warm smile. "Avery, I know you love the freedom of playing solo, but playing in an orchestra could broaden your horizons. The school also offers a music scholarship for outstanding talents." Avery's eyes widened. A scholarship? She had never imagined such a thing. For her, playing the violin was merely a way to be true to herself. But maybe this was the big opportunity she hadn't expected. Jake chimed in. "It could help you get into a great music program down the road, or at least give you a bigger stage." Avery stood quietly for a moment, then gave a slight nod. A flicker of a smile crossed her lips. "I'll give it a try." And thus, a new question emerged. Would Avery, the once invisible girl, embrace a more professional musical path, or retreat from the weight of expectations and judgments? Rehearsals for the school orchestra auditions took place on Wednesday afternoon in Music Room, a space scattered with stands, and home to an old upright piano. Ms. Delgado and two music teachers acted as judges. Nerves churned in Avery's stomach as she arrived with her violin. This time, there was no huge crowd, no cheering or catcalls, just the intimidating presence of experienced music teachers who knew how to critique technique and style. She waited her turn, listening as other violinists stumbled on notes. Anxiety pressed on her. Then her name was called. Avery stepped forward, placed the violin on her shoulder, and found Ms. Delgado's encouraging gaze. She felt more confident than before. After all, she'd just faced an entire school audience. She took a slow breath, shut her eyes, and began to play. This time, it was a classical concerto, not her own composition. Still, she poured feeling into every bow stroke, shaping the piece with a personal touch. When the final note faded, she opened her eyes to see the judges quietly nodding, scribbling on their sheets. Miss Delgado clapped softly. "Well done, Avery. Excellent control of tempo and dynamics. We'll let you know soon." Avery bowed slightly and stepped away, equal parts relieved and anxious. The following afternoon, as Avery sat reading in the library, Ms. Delgado came looking for her. "Congratulations, Avery. You've been accepted into the school orchestra. You'll also get a chance to play at the end-of-year ceremony in front of the entire school." Avery's heart fluttered. She recalled the spotlight, the hush of the auditorium, the surge of emotion as the crowd applauded. Yet she also remembered the thrill of being truly heard. "Thank you," she managed. Ms. Delgado offered a gentle smile. "Keep playing your way, Avery. That's what makes it special." Late that afternoon, Avery walked home along the lakeside riverbank. The setting sun cast a pinkish hue across the water. She found a patch of grass near the shoreline, set down her violin case, and had the sudden urge to play for herself alone. She drew the bow across the strings, producing a tune that was neither entirely sad nor entirely happy, more like a melding of both. The river lay still, tree shadows quivering in the gentle breeze. She sensed her spirit drifting calmly, like the quiet current of the water. In that moment, it struck her. Everything began with mocking words, scornful looks, and half-hearted remarks from teachers. Yet those very jibes served as the flame pushing her to prove herself. The next morning, Riverside's newsletter mentioned the talent showcase, praising Avery Johnson's moving violin solo. For the first time, her name was publicly mentioned with genuine admiration. Not everyone's attitude changed overnight. Some still made snide remarks. But Avery had discovered how to turn her silence into a powerful sound. Now, she no longer felt invisible. Walking the halls, she didn't press herself against the walls as usual. Jake waved from across the corridor. Some classmates greeted her in passing. Mr. Fletcher flashed a proud nod. Ms. Caldwell offered a small, contrite smile. Avery smiled back, gripping her violin case, not to hide behind it, but as if claiming, "I'm here, and I'm going to keep making myself heard." In the cramped, peeling confines of apartment 2B that evening, Avery's mother headed out for her night shift, while Miles sat in the living room doing homework. Avery perched on the edge of her bed, violin case beside her. But instead of practicing, she paused in the silence. She realized the talent showcase had ended, but a new door in her life had opened. She might still encounter doubt and whispers, but she was no longer silent. Avery's violin wasn't just a collection of wood and strings. It was the voice she had long been searching for. People might mock or disbelieve, but they could no longer deny one simple truth. They had listened to her. Avery Johnson's story, began in near-total silence, but music helped her say everything that needed to be heard. The taunts, the dismissive jokes, the teacher's skepticism, the lurking fear in her own heart, all served as catalysts for her growth. In life, we often find ourselves hesitant to speak up when met with ridicule. Yet silence can be a secret reservoir of power. When it finally breaks, its resonance can eclipse 1,000 ordinary words. Avery learned to transform fear into motivation, turning her battered violin into a vessel for her true self. She forced the world to listen, even if initially they meant only to laugh. But once people truly listened, they realized behind that shy exterior was a blazing spirit. Life will offer many stages. Opportunities only matter when we have the courage to seize them. Avery's lesson is this: don't wait for someone else to give you permission to shine. Shine anyway, even if no one's paying attention. Applause may fade, but the real triumph lies in having the courage to step on stage at all.